Republican Governor Greg Abbott says Texas authorities and maybe even the FBI are working to track down Democratic lawmakers who fled the state to block a Republican redistricting plan that is rigged to lock in GOP power and aligns with Donald Trump's playbook. Senator John Cornyn claims the FBI is already helping, but legal experts aren't so sure. They say the FBI usually stays out of state political fights. Democrats are calling this a dangerous abuse of power and a threat to democracy. Joining us tonight, Texas State Representatives Christian Manuel and Lauren Ashley Simmons. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My first question off the top, Representative Ashley Simmons, how are you doing right now?
Hanging in there. It's an interesting situation to be in, but this was so important for our communities for us to make this really hard decision. So I'm just, it's a lot of different emotions right now, but, we're resolute. We know why we're here and we know what we're fighting for.
And Representative Ashley Simmons, when people talk about this idea of you all are fleeing, what does that conjure up in your mind? Because for so many of us, it conjures up this idea of these people are cowards. They're scared to take a stand. How do you want to reframe the vocabulary around this?
So, I like to be very clear. I'm from Houston, born and raised. I grew up in Third Ward. I've never run from a fight in my life. If anything, we're bringing the fight to the streets and going directly to, Democratic governors and our colleagues who are elected officials in other states and Democrats to kind of spread the word. And I keep saying that Texas is the canary in the coal mine. This is not Vegas. What happens in Texas does not stay in Texas. And what Donald Trump is asking our governors to do and in a way forcing our governors to do will have nationwide impacts. It's not just the loss of 5 congressional seats in a racist power grab. It's what does that mean for the majority in Congress when our people are already suffering so much?
And Representative Manuel, can you follow up on that? So many people talk about, oh, this is just a Texas issue. But as Representative Ashley Simmons is saying, this is a national issue. Can you talk about the implications of what you're doing nationally? And also let us know how you're doing personally.
This has implications because it's going to change what kind of representation is there in the White House. And if there is investigations in the White House, or if there's investigations anywhere. How I'm doing is I'm resolved in what I'm doing. I'm here for the fight. I am hoping that we continue to be able to fight and stay out with the rest of our Democratic colleagues. But this is just a sham that is taking away voting rights from particularly Black and brown people throughout this state that is going to end up reverberating across the entire country. And people, when they're saying that we're fleeing, Rep. Simmons said it the best. We are bringing this to the people because we only had one hearing over these maps with 33 million Texans. So Texans don't even by and large know about this unless we did bring these to the streets and say we're not going to sit in this gilded palace and just sit here and say we know it all. We brought it to them. We're bringing it to the streets. This is something that they can't do, and this is something that we're going to continue to do as long as we possibly can.
And I want to be clear, too, breaking quorum is a tool. It's mentioned in our Texas Constitution. It is what the minority party has in their toolbox. And it can be seen as extreme or a nuclear option, but it was a way for us to stop the process, stop business as usual, and give ourselves an opportunity to talk about what's really going on. Like my colleague said, one hearing with maps for a few hundred Texans versus a state of 30 million. I mean, that is completely unfair. And I want us to also remember Texas meets on a biennium legislatively. That means we just got out of a session for 140 days. The governor called us back for a special session. 30 days, limited in scope, is only what he allows us to do. And so this was supposed to be done in the cover of night. It was supposed to go through really quickly, circumvent and bypass normal democratic procedures, and the Democrats in the House were supposed to just lay down and take it. And I don't think that's what I don't think they expected us to stand up the way that we did.
And could you also educate us a little bit more, Representative Manuel, because I feel like For us who don't live in Texas, we were under the impression that y'all were supposed to be coming into session to talk about flood relief, to help the people of Kerr County, to help all of the victims. And then all of a sudden, Donald Trump makes a phone call and we're having a conversation about redistricting, and you have to leave the state in order to protest.
What's being played right here are political games. The governor, the lieutenant governor, and the speaker have a right to get into a room and completely fund these programs without us even having to have a special session. They could have done this weeks ago, but what they're doing is they're lying to people and they're telling people that we're not here doing our jobs. I lost 5 constituents from my area in this flood, so this is vastly important to me. We had the highest record of recorded rainfall in human history in Jefferson County during Harvey. So flood is on the top of my list and what I ran on when I ran for office. This is a game, and this is in effect a political stunt for people who are running for re-election, and they're using black and brown bodies as an excuse to say that we're lazy when they have not done the job that they were supposed to be doing for all these years, and now somehow we're the ones that are to blame for this. This is smoke and mirrors. I hope people see through this, and this is one of the reasons we are out here talking to people, to let them know you're being lied to, and the implications of this are going to be disastrous, because Florida has just filed to have a select congressional rehearing committee as well. So they're about to do this next, and then it's going to be Ohio. It's going to be in every different state, and we're going to end up losing representation over gerrymandering.
Absolutely. And I want to come back to you, Representative Simmons, on this particular take by Governor Abbott talking about these maps. Take a listen.
So most people know that at the beginning of a decade, all states go through the redistricting process based upon what the new census shows. Since that redistricting process took place, 2 things have changed. One is the law, the other is the facts. The legal change was actually catalyzed by the Democrats. Democrats filed a lawsuit in 2022 that was decided last year, where courts decided that Texas is no longer required to have what are called coalition districts. And as a result, we're able to take the people who are in those coalition districts and make sure they're going to be in districts that really represent the voting preference of those people who live here in Texas. And then the fact that's changed, we saw in the aftermath of the Trump election that an overwhelming number of Hispanics and blacks, as well as others, chose to vote for Trump. 4 of the 5 districts that we're going to create are predominantly Hispanic districts. Right. They're going to have to be voting for Republican as opposed to Democrats. Democrats think they have an ownership right to voters who are Hispanic or black. They're now learning the hard way. Those voters are supporting Republicans.
Representative Simmons, your response.
So I'll go ahead and say this and try to keep it Christian and rated G as possible. Our governor has a very interesting relationship with the truth. And by what I mean is he's just flat out not being honest right here. And you can even look at the stats and the facts from the last election alone. First of all, Texas is not a red state in the way that we talk about red states. If anything, it's a non-voting state, right? We have millions of voters and people who are registered but who just don't come out. But on the other part of that, you can look and see the last election between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris and what those numbers were. And so what this picture that he's trying to paint is that they are entitled to do this because there are so many more Republican voters of color that have just popped up out of nowhere when the facts just don't show that. The other part of it is too, and I think he really casually leaves this out, is no, he's not doing this based on any other reason than Donald Trump calling him and saying, hey, I need 5 Republican seats because, one, I know this big bad bill is going to be really bad for people, my constituents in general, who may not come out and reelect Republicans in 26, and I got to make sure I have the majority in Congress to not just bypass and pass more terrible legislation, but to also shirk accountability. And so, I hear what Governor Abbott is saying, but again, he's going to say whatever he thinks is necessary to mislead people and misdirect when the facts just don't show that. And what he's talking about with those last set of maps, yeah, they are under litigation, but what he's calling coalition districts, that's not a terminology that I would use. But what I will say is that black and brown voters are being disenfranchised. Black and brown voters are losing representation. The congressional district that I live in right now, they drew our congressman out of his own district, Congressional District 9. We see that in Dallas, in North Texas, that they're losing a black representative. And so, I will, hand over to my colleague to kind of, give his thoughts on that. But it's very frustrating to hear this. And also, too, the other part of it is, too, we have really pressing issues that we should be focused on. Mid-decade redistricting is just not a priority for anybody but Donald Trump. It's not even the governor's priority, because if it was, it would have been thought of way before we gavelled out on June 2nd.
Representative Manuel?
My colleague said it's so great. And what I want to add to this is it's so very interesting that they get a few black people here and there, because we are not a monolith. And all of a sudden it's a resounding alarm that we need to redistrict the state, which is crazy and lunacy in its own self. But this is also the funny thing. They keep saying how much they've given us. They're making 4 Hispanic opportunity seats. But what they're not also telling you is in these maps, they've taken out the economic engines from historically black districts, from 18, from 33, and economic engines are businesses that were in these communities that congressional members were able to go to and check on them and make sure they were doing the right thing. And they have taken those from both of those historically black districts and given them to completely different districts. How is that being helpful? How is that what Texans ask for? This, again, is smoke and mirrors. This is them playing political games with people's lives, and they're all of a sudden saying that they want to follow the law. Well, we have laws that say we should be putting air conditions in prisons. We still haven't done that one. We still have people who are dying of heat exhaustion, but somehow, all of a sudden, the people's will needs to be done, and we need to follow the law, but we're not even doing that with other things that we're supposed to be doing. So please forgive me for saying this. It's a sad day when people will use black and brown bodies to get their own political agenda and not care what kind of harm and what kind of devastation that they will leave us in, all for the tool of saying, all of a sudden now we want to win. No, they're scared that they know they're going to lose in this midterm, and they're cheating to try to get ahead.
In just this very short time, you've been enlightening us both with this information.